cover the whole back in the masking tape. Go ahead and draw your layout lines. You look at it, you don't like it, you take the masking tape off, start again. That way you got a nice clean slate. You don't have extra lines that are in there that you can't get out. Trying to sand out, erasing on wood doesn't really work very well, as you probably know. Okay, so that's the center line. Kind of tricky to see. So right at the very tips, I'm going to make it about 3/8 of an inch wide to start. You can probably come down even farther than that. I don't have any bows up here to show you. Should have brought some out, but anyway. But if we start out at 1/2 inch, you can always take more off after. 1/4 inch on each side. Your limb tips, when you're designing your bow or making a bow, stave bow, whatever, you want your limb tips to be nice and light. If you think about a fishing rod with a real heavy lure on it, how the end of it whips around. When you're shooting a bow and you release the arrow and the arrow leaves, if the limb tips are really heavy, it's hard to get the limb tips to go forward, and then it's really hard to get them to stop. Exactly. So what happens is they keep whipping back and forth, and it starts to shake. It's called hand shock. So if you've got clubs for tips, it'd be alright if you want to beat someone with it, I suppose, but they are brutal to shoot. I've had one that someone made for me, and it has some pretty significant tips. White oak, it's pretty heavy, and it just about knocks your teeth out trying to when you shoot it. So you want to keep the limb tips nice and light. The best way to do that is if you make them narrow but thick. The reason for that, if you take a piece of wood that's 1 inch by 1 inch, and it takes 5 pounds of force to bend it down 1 inch, okay, over a certain length. Now you double that up, and you make it twice as wide, so it's 2 inches by 1 inch thick. And it's going to take twice as much weight, so it'll take 10 pounds to get it to bend that same amount. Now if you flip that, and you have 1 inch wide by 2 inches thick, it's going to take approximately 60 pounds. Sorry, what did I say, 5 pounds? So 30 pounds. 6 times as much. So if you make it twice as thick, it's 6 times stronger. If you make it twice as wide, it's only twice as strong. So we use that to our advantage. We make it just a little bit thicker, and then it doesn't bend. And we make it a lot narrower, and that really lightens up the tips, and it allows the limbs, when they're loaded up, to release that energy and bring that limb tip forward fast, increases the speed, and then it doesn't whip around after the shot, after the arrow's released, because more energy is going into the arrow and bringing it to the target. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. Generally I like to leave the tips about 4 or 5 inches, maybe 6, depending on the design and the length of the bow, stiff, so they don't bend at all. So we don't have a full curve. What we have is a straight section on each end. What you'll find if you ever try and bend a piece of wood, steam bend it, put it on a form, if you've got a perfect arc and you clamp that piece of wood onto it, steam bend it, you can do everything that you want, but those very tips are not going to come into that perfect arc. You take that off, you can put whatever clamps you want on it, you take that off the form, and you'll see that the very tips are straight, because they do not want to bend.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the nature of the wood, it's how it works. We use that to our advantage. Keep those a little bit stiff, because they don't want to bend anyway. So we'll work that into our bow. Last 6 inches or so, it doesn't take very much weight or anything to keep them stiff, and it's when they're stiff you can really make them narrower, lighter, lightens up the tips, use that to our advantage. It's actually a design that the oldest bows in the world that they found in bogs in Denmark, 9,000-year-old bows. That's the design that they already had 9,000 years ago. It's a pretty advanced.
Work back then.
Yeah, and it's a pretty advanced way to make a bow. So we know that they'd already been making them for. I mean, you're talking about trial and error from little groups here and there. They didn't have the internet to share this information. So for them to be making these bows on a consistent basis over a large area, you know that they've been making bows for a long time, and this is what they found
Worked the best.
worked the best.
Yeah.
And even today, you can't really make any better design than what they had 9,000 years ago. They already had it to the apex of using these materials. These are your parameters. This is the best you can get.
Yeah.
And it's the same all over the world, depending on what materials people had, what environment that they were using it in, whether it was dry or wet or cold or warm, and what they were using it for, whether it was for war or for hunting. Every culture that used the bow and arrow, which is almost every culture all over the world, they all brought it right up to the very maximum that they could with their materials and their environment and what they were doing. So, pretty interesting stuff. That's it for another day. Okay, so we're going to start out at the fades. This is called the fades, where it goes from your stiff handle section into your bending working limb. Okay? So we're going to go from 1 1/4 inch there, and we're just going to narrow it down slightly. We're going to we'll come in to 3 inches. So off the center, I'm just going to make it slightly narrower than the 1 1/4 inch. And let's say we go to 1 inch. Okay. I'm going to go even narrower than that actually. I'm going to go 7/8. And once again, I'm just marking it off of the center line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect that one to that mark that I made at the fades. That's going to give us a little bit of taper. I'm going to do the same on the other side as well. Oop. Slippery. Tricky to see on that ash, which is another good reason to put the masking tape on. It hides all the grain. It doesn't throw you off when you're trying to look at it. And all I'm going to do for now is I'm going to connect those 2 points from our 1/2 inch. Like I said, this will come down a lot after we start shaping it. But you can always take more off. You can't put it back on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's going to be essentially the shape of our limb.
Okay.
Okay. Working in.